So, welcome to another episode. So, today we have Peter Haberl on, who is a sports psychologist, as well as being a professional ice hockey player in the past, been to multiple Olympics as a coach. So, welcome to today's show, Peter.
Thanks for having me.
I was most interested, actually. I was looking at obviously your work and your literature and your LinkedIn and all those sorts of things. And one of the things that you said was kind of like a catchphrase is "I don't care what you think or how you feel." What do you
Yeah,
mean by that?
specifically, I don't care how you feel, and I know that sounds like super off-putting, right? Particularly coming from a psychology person and with a profession where we're supposed to care about your feelings. But the reason that I come with that is having been now to 10 Olympic Games as an applied sports psychologist. And in that environment, yeah, there's certainly a desire to feel the right way. And there's a myth out there thinking that if I feel the right way, I'll perform well. And if I feel the wrong way, I'll perform poorly. And feeling the wrong way usually means I shouldn't be having any unpleasant, any negative and uncomfortable mood states, feelings, and so forth. But again, my experience now on the ground, being with athletes in the moment prior to the big competition, almost always uncomfortable emotions are actually present. And then when in that space, you think you shouldn't be feeling this way. And if you feel this way, you perform poorly, you're usually in big trouble and you fight your own mind. So what I'm trying to get across with that somewhat off-putting statement, I don't care how you feel, is to get the athletes to understand it is not about their feelings in that moment. It is about their awareness of whatever is present and then skillfully responding to those feelings with effective actions in that performance environment. So I don't care how they feel. I care a great deal that they notice how they feel. And then from their perspective of awareness, skillfully work with those feelings. Because uncomfortable feelings, by definition, are almost unavoidable in that performance space.
Yeah, it seems to be a sort of common. I don't know if it's a misconception from what you're saying. It is that we need to focus on uh, positive performance, the success. Holding the medal around our neck, or holding the trophy up to the sky. So what you're saying is that yes, negative emotions are likely to happen, and it's managing those in a way that's going to be of net benefit to the performance of the individual. And I just want to ask this actually. So I perform in judo, and obviously you've been a professional athlete. Do you find it that it's a case that the occasion becomes more important than the performance? So, for example, someone might be really good at ice hockey, judo, football, and they can do fantastic things with the ball, with the puck, throwing, whatever it may be. But when it comes to the final, the event itself overshadows the process that they are used to following. Do you think that that's a big issue for athletes?
Yes, I think it's like a year and a half ago was an interesting study that came out where they actually looked at monkeys and they offered monkeys uh, prices with regards to food. And the argument was that the bigger the jackpot, the bigger the price is, the more likely the neuromotor system of the monkeys actually was impaired or impaired their performance. So coming back to Olympic Games, it's a big jackpot. And that big jackpot has the impact of kind of hijacking the mind to the future, taking the mind away from the present moment. And for me, in my approach, I consider attention to be the true currency of performance, not thoughts and not feelings. So when we perform our best, we're in the present moment, right? And we're focused on the task at hand. That big jackpot, say the Olympic gold medal, uh, can really literally steal our attention, and then we're in big trouble from a performance perspective.
So you're looking at focusing on the performance and being in the present as opposed to focusing on the reward, the result. Are you referring to kind of flow state then in that respect?
Actually, no, I do not. I think flow states are wonderful, but flow states are highly unlikely in a performance environment such as the Olympic Games. what we're looking for in that environment are clutch states. And the sort of difference is in clutch states, it's effortful. Flow states are effortless from an intentional perspective. In a clutch state, we're very aware of what's at stake. But again, that awareness allows us actually to focus on the present moment in the awareness of what's at stake. Whereas in the flow state, you kind of forget about all that. But if you actually look at the research on flow, like even going back to Csikszentmihalyi's original research, he researched rock climbers and surfers. Okay, and yes, those are sort of natural flow sports, so to speak. But he didn't research athletes competing for a gold medal that comes around every 4 years. And again, when you're in the Olympic space, that outcome is so prevalent and so predominant and so important that my argument is actually you will not get into a flow state, nor do you need to get into a flow state. What you're striving for is more of a clutch state, right? Where again where it's effortful, but you are in charge of your attention.
It's interesting you say that about once every 4 years, because it's like trying to catch a train that comes once every 2 weeks. And obviously, if you miss the train, you have to wait for another 2 weeks to get to your destination. In which case, your interview might have gone, or your plane might have flown that you needed to get to, or the date that you were aiming for. The girls obviously had to leave because you're going to be 2 weeks late. Is it very much the case of that where I've trained for 4 years this Olympic cycle to get to this position, and there's so much riding on it that this is where people like yourself come in to try and balance the keel on the ship, as it were, because as you say, emotions can get the best of people, where they might be fantastic in practice and training, but come the big day, the emotion is too overwhelming for them.
That's correct. Yes, and that's a nice metaphor with that. That train that you miss, and obviously the train that you miss here, might just come once in a lifetime. I think the most Olympians, like I think it's like 73%, something like that, are one-time Olympians, so they get one shot at this, right? Um, and again, by definition, the equation that's usually in the head of the athlete is uncomfortable emotions equals poor performance. And part of my job is to dispel that myth. The equation that's actually there is that if the outcome is uncertain, which is by definition the case the Olympic Games, and the outcome means the world to you, okay, unpleasant emotions will arise. So uncertainty and high meaning means unpleasant emotions will arise. So then that means, again, from a preparation perspective, is can I get really comfortable with the uncomfortable? Can I get comfortable with those uncomfortable emotions? And then be able in that uncomfortableness to take charge of my attention. Because then again, I'm giving myself the best chance to be successful. So again, part of the work is to normalize the experience of unpleasant emotions and to help athletes understand they can develop the skills to work with those unpleasant emotions.
It's definitely a case of pressure, isn't it? It's like people think, I best not fuck this up, and they go through all of the negative things that could happen, the disappointment from their family, from their kids, their coach, whatever it may be, and it becomes an obsession in the wrong way. So how do we people, and how should we deal with pressure, not just, in a sports environment, but even in life in general? Why does pressure cause so much of a hindrance to performance?
I think it's helpful to look up, what is the definition of pressure. And if you look it up in the dictionary, there's actually a psychological definition. And the way it's defined is pressure is a constraining influence on the will or the mind. That begs the question, okay, what is that constraining influence on the will and the mind? And it is indeed the mind itself that constrains itself, to your point, right? Because the mind will travel to the outcome and what the outcome means. So if I win that gold medal, right, it's going to be everlasting bliss. But that's actually not how it works. what will be important is to make this distinction and separation between the outcome, the goal, the destination, and the journey, the direction. And when I focus back on the journey and I focus back on the direction, that's an invitation to clarify values. So in my work, it's really important to help the athletes understand what are their values. So what are values? Values are about how we want to be, how we want to carry ourselves. The technical definition of values is desired global qualities of ongoing actions, right? So how do I act on an ongoing basis? How do I carry myself on an ongoing basis? What's important to me? Earlier on, you used the metaphor of a keel that keeps the boat steady. And that's a helpful metaphor for values, right? So values are like a compass, but they're also like a keel on a sailboat that keeps the ship steady in the storm. Values are about how I want to be in this moment, whereas goals are what I want to get. And I want to, yes, goals are important, but I really don't have to ask the athletes what their goals are, right, in the space. I know they want to qualify for the games. I know they want to win a medal there. What we don't know usually is their values. So we spend quite a bit of time clarifying that, teasing that out, and then also connecting with that on a regular basis. So they can use that compass to guide their daily actions.
Do you think some people lose before they even begin? You know, with reputation, for example, if they're going up with someone who they perceive as better, they pedestalize this person, you know, whether they're running against them or fighting them or competing against them in whatever sport, fencing, for example. Do you think that has an impact? Because if you've already lost in the mind first, to actually step out there and win is probably a lot harder than if you go out there thinking, you know, I should win this, essentially, without being overly complacent. I think it was in the Sun Tzu book. He said the warrior wins the battle first, then goes to war, or something along those lines. Do you think there's a truth to that?
Yes. The metaphor I use is that the mind is a thought and emotion producing factory. So this factory all day long produces thoughts and emotions. And if I'm not aware of what that factory produces, I can get into big trouble as an athlete. So that factory might produce, I can't beat opponent X. And if I buy into that, then that thought will start to control my behavior. And then we're in trouble. Same with I should beat X. That thought can also get into trouble when reality does not meet that command, so to speak, does not meet that expectation. So again, this is where from my perspective, awareness is a superpower, right? Because awareness allows me to notice what that factory that is the human mind offers up and then skillfully respond to that.
What's your view on things such as visualization? So I read a book once called "With Winning in Mind" by Lanny Bassam. I don't know if you're familiar with it. And he was a rifle shooter, and he talks about how, yes, you know, physical practice is important, but he would use visualization to practice just the perfect shot, the perfect event, the perfect throw, whatever it may be, in order to have this as an ideal, rather than, because people go through, as with anything, you know, parents, their kid goes out late at night, they don't think about, you know, their kid coming home, they think, oh, what if they get stabbed, what if they get run over? They automatically play out these negative things that are then getting fixed in their mind. So I don't know what your view on visualization and positive visualization is, especially with respect of ideal the perfect, well, first of all, the perfect performance, and two, remembering times that it went well for you. So literally specific times that you ran your fastest run or threw, you know, your best basketball shot or whatever it may be. Do you think there's something in that at all?
Um, I am somewhat skeptical of that approach, to be quite honest. So the way I look at visualization, I look at more as a concentration practice where you deliberately rehearse your routines, how you go about things, where you can also rehearse how you work with your mind. But I would not recommend using visualization to say, let's picture the perfect execution, and let's see yourself winning. Because all that does is again it pulls the mind to the future, to the outcome. Whereas I want to get really good at focusing on the process. So if I use visualization to help myself rehearse the process and also help myself rehearse to challenges coming up, then I'm all for it. If I use visualization to see myself winning, I actually recommend against that.
Because you're just to sort of steelman or recap what you're saying is because you're saying that that takes power away from the now and you're looking at the future again. What you're trying to say is the whole point is to be focused on the now, the performance, how you're feeling at this point, rather than putting your focus into future events, future results, future outcomes.
Precisely, yes, precisely.
So obviously, I'm assuming your job is very much, working with the athletes and, people going through a bad time, you're there to help them. If you could design or play out a story for the ideal routine, let's say, physically, mentally, from just arriving or the week before the Olympics to throughout the Olympics, what would that sort of journey look like from your sort of years of experience, having gone to multiple Olympics, being a professional athlete yourself? Because look, no one can stick to ideals generally anyway. Ideally, I'd love to, do X and do Y and do Z, but unfortunately, sometimes things get in the way, and as you say, emotions can get involved. How would you describe the perfect athlete, Mr. Athlete, if you want to call him that?
Um, I'm hesitant to use descriptions like the perfect athlete. I would describe what I'm looking for is a mentally flexible athlete. And I'm sort of very specific in that terminology, because it was so a big buzzword in my field in sports psychology is mental toughness. Again, I do not use that terminology. I find it counterproductive because toughness implies that you don't have any unpleasant feelings, right?
And
Toughness,
it implies rigidity as well, doesn't it? Versus
exactly,
flexibility.
exactly. And so the more helpful metaphor here is, picture a palm tree during a hurricane. The palm tree bends. The palm tree isn't tough. The palm tree is flexible, and because it's flexible, it can ride out that storm. So that's kind of what I'm after, this idea of being mentally flexible in that environment.
It's like
And
the Eiffel Tower and tall buildings. If they were too rigid, they would snap in half. They have to move, as you
they
say,
have
in
to
order
move
to
precisely.
absorb the
Yeah,
pressures.
precisely. Yes, precisely. That from my perspective requires sort of deliberately training what I call three superpowers. The first superpower is awareness. Why is awareness a superpower? Because awareness has no preference, awareness has no bias, awareness doesn't push anything away, awareness doesn't cling to anything, awareness is open to whatever shows up. So awareness allows me to notice what is on my mind, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, helpful, unhelpful, and so forth. And then awareness allows me to take charge of my attention, which is the third superpower, right? The second superpower, can I focus on the task in front of me? Almost always that focus will be external. So that's the second superpower, attention as the currency of performance. And the third superpower is what I refer to as attitudes of minds. So we have the AAA superpowers. Attitude of minds are values, right? How do I respond to a given situation? How do I carry myself? So I want those three superpowers to be cultivated and trained, because once you get into that Olympic space, almost always the emotional storm will arise. And then as it rises, then I can skillfully respond to it.
So let's just go through them for one by one then. So if you start with the first of the triple A, if you like, and we'll
Yeah.
just sort of work through the three, because I think it's important to break it down. And to be honest, from what you've said there, a lot of these things are applicable to normal life as well, not just in elite athletes. And of course, as with anything for elite athletes, things need to be refined. The diet needs to be slightly more refined than a regular person. The practice, the recovery, the mentality to get that peak performance need to be slightly better. But yeah, let's just go through those three pillars, if you like, individually.
Yeah, so the first one is awareness, right? We have lots of practice in thinking, but we have a lot less practice in noticing what we're thinking. So my argument is we can very deliberately cultivate that faculty of noticing what thoughts is the mind actually offering up right now. Because then I can ask the question: are these thoughts helping my performance or are they hurting my performance? If they're helping my performance, by all means, run with it. If they're hurting my performance, I can let those thoughts be. Because in the end, thoughts are just thoughts, right? We are having thoughts, but we're not our thoughts. And awareness allows me to step into that space where I can notice, where I can name, and where I can normalize what the thinking mind offers up. And then from that perspective of awareness, I can choose what actions I'll take.
So it's a bit like so some people are very impulsive, aren't they? They don't really think, they can't really see their own mind. They do things and they don't really understand why they do it. They are hamsters on a wheel. So what you're essentially saying is we need to take a step back and try and be that invisible mind observing how our mind is behaving and trying to work out, why does my mind think about these things on this particular day or during this particular type of practice or this particular event, and at other times it does something different. And I think what you're saying is that we need to be aware of how our brain is operating in order to course correct it moving forward. Is that fair?
Yes, that is spot on. That's spot on. That's exactly what I'm saying. Yes. We can cultivate that observing perspective, as you call it, great metaphor. And as we cultivate that perspective, it actually gives us the freedom to choose. So awareness is all about sovereignty, the right to choose our way, irrespective of what I feel and irrespective of what I may think. To give you a specific example, it's just women's tennis, maybe the year 2017. Serena Williams, best tennis player in the world, in the final of the U.S. Open, is playing ranked number one in the world, and about to complete the career Grand Slam, winning all four majors in a year. And she's playing Roberta Vinci from Italy. And Roberta was ranked, I think, 43rd in the world at that time. And Roberta had actually, so this is a semifinal, so it was on a Friday, right? Semifinal. And Roberta had booked her ticket home for the next day, indicating that clearly she did not believe she could beat Serena Williams. Otherwise, why would you book your ticket before the final happens? So she booked that ticket, thinking, yep, this is how it's going to go. So the mind says you don't really have a chance here. Yet then she shows up and competes for every ball, and lo and behold, she wins that semifinal. So obviously she didn't buy what her mind had to offer, right? So at some point in time, she was aware these are my thoughts. I'm not going to listen to these thoughts. I'm going to come and compete anyway, compete for the point, and then let's see what happens. So she ends up winning that semifinal, and she ends up changing her flight home to after the final on Sunday.
That's awesome. As you said, coming back to what we said earlier, maybe it's not just about thinking you're going to win or thinking you're going to lose, because I think that, as you said, there has to be that alignment. Maybe you tell yourself this story, but you don't really believe it. And from what you've said, that's sort of what happened there. So, how can people improve their awareness then? So we understand that having a better awareness is important, but how do we go about trying to improve our ability to be aware, essentially?
Oh, yeah, great question. Lots of different exercises from a mindfulness perspective, right? This can be as simple as noticing what's present right now. So I call this the weather check, right? We check the weather outside and then we adjust. But we can also check the weather, the internal weather, so to speak, right? So what is present right now on my mind, right? And that can be as simple as there is, and then you name what is present right now, right? There is curiosity in this moment, or there is nervousness, or there is anxiety. Or another version is anxiety is like this. So like the trap we tend to fall into is like with anxiety, like I am anxious is often how we phrase that. I am anxious. That's quite different than anxiety is like this, or there is anxiety. So the moment I phrase it a little bit differently, I begin to create some separation, right? I think in that separation, that's where awareness opens up, and that's where the freedom to then choose my next actions come in. Another simple exercise here is again, let's take anxiety. Like I am anxious, right? Just you and the listener, I am anxious. Just sit with that for a moment. I am anxious. Just notice how that feels. Notice how that lands. Now here's version 2. I'm having the feeling I'm anxious.
Yeah, 100%. I think what you can see from that is instead of saying I am anxious, which is you are that you are anxious. Your whole body is anxious. Whereas I'm experiencing anxiousness sort of takes the power away from the anxiousness somehow, because what you're saying is I'm experiencing something. It's coming through me, and it's going to leave at some point. Whereas I think if you say I am anxious, you're literally saying it has power over you. So I think that's a really interesting use of language that can help to take away the power from your feelings, but give you the power to actually be the observer rather
Yes.
than the experiencer, essentially.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. And then again, once I'm the observer, right, then I can choose my next action.
So what about the second of the triple A's then? If
Yeah,
you speak to that.
that brings us to attention, like the second AAA, attention being the currency of performance. So again, once I'm aware of right what is present on the mind, I get to choose where I put my attention. And this is so important for athletes at the Olympic Games, but it is also so important for anybody else for any level of performance, and particularly I think nowadays with the the scourge of social media, basically, which is really in essence a thief of attention. If I want to perform, I need to be in the present moment. I need to focus on the task at hand. So can I focus on the relevant cues on a given task as an athlete, as a student, as a business person, but also being in a relationship. This is a saying I think from Joe Tarrant, the mindfulness teacher, that attention is a fundamental act of love. They think of a mother and her baby. That mother gives that baby all her attention. So attention is really, really important. And we want to be in charge of our attention. And we want to notice when attention gets hijacked.
I love that, because I think the way that I think of attention is if you think of a light bulb like the one behind me, where it's shining the light spread across the room, the bookshelf, the plaque, the little trophies, or well, statues, whatever you want to call them. But focus or attention for me is a laser where that attention is focused on one particular area. So you mentioned the mother and the child. The reason that that's a great example is that the mother is giving all of her attention to the child, which means that she's probably not thinking about her hunger as much. She's not thinking about her friends as much. She's not thinking about what's on TV. Those thoughts have been repurposed to the child. So I think that's actually quite an important way to think about it. It's a spread of your awareness to, exercise or food or business projects. No, a focus of attention means that you're putting all your eggs in one basket, in a slightly different way of using that that analogy, if you like.
Yes, and again, great metaphor, right? Right, of that flash, that beam of light on this particular task. That's a very good way of, I think, looking at attention. Yes, and again, I want to be in charge of where I put that beam of light.
So what do you find from an athlete's perspective takes their attention most just prior or during performances? Obviously, I'm assuming you review and have a debrief afterwards about what happened during the race or the whatever that sporting event is. What do you find takes attention from the athletes most of all?
Yes, so I refer to that as the internal thief that will try to steal attention, and that thief will come in different forms. At the Olympic Games, often that thief comes in the form of, if I don't win the gold medal, I'll let my country down, I let my coach down, I let my sport federation down, I let my family down, I let myself down.
So what you're saying is the attention, coming back to that, is coming away from the performance and what I need to do during the performance to the exterior, the secondary part of that, because the primary thing is the race, the sporting event. The secondary is what's going to happen after that. Either everyone's going to love me or everyone's going to hate me, and I think that's also a very unhealthy way from a psychological perspective of tying success to love and all this validation and all of that sort of thing. Is saying, well, just because of this result, it's going to determine how I feel about myself and how others feel about me, and that can be quite damaging, I think, for individuals, athletes, and obviously in general life as well. That conditional happiness, that conditional love versus unconditional, and actually, sometimes you have to have gone through loss in order to win at the seventh time because you've learned all of these lessons. People generally want to win. That's very unlikely. You can have two people, same skill set, same work ethic, same routines, but at the end of the day, one has to win, one has to lose.
That is correct. Yes, and sport doesn't actually work that way where you win all the time. That's like super rare, right? Just the other way around, you lose a lot, but much can be learned from losing. Exactly, yes.
I mean, the example I always use is the boxer. If you want to be a world champion boxer, you've been punched in the face thousands and thousands of times. Whereas me and you, I mean, maybe you've been punched more times being involved in ice hockey, but yeah, we've been punched less than a world champion boxer, yet they're better than us because they have gone through that process. And I think that's very much the case with sports and life in general. So what about the third part of this AAA strategy then, Peter?
Yeah, the third part are attitudes of mind, which I use to describe values. So this is how what are attitudes of mind? It's not an emotion; it's how I respond to an emotional state, right? And values again defined as global qualities of ongoing actions. So values, they tell us how we're going to act, how we'll carry ourselves in a given situation, irrespective of what thoughts and feelings are present. So this is again why it really matters. Like a great way to address this is just think of somebody you admire. Think of a person you admire, or if you're an Olympic athlete, think of an Olympic athlete you admire, right? And so that person comes to mind, and then okay, think about what is it you admire about them, and as you share what you admire about them, actually what you will be doing is you'll be talking about your values and what matters to you. So then we can tease that out. So what are the values, and then what are the actions that are aligned with these values, and then can we bring those actions to a given performance environment.
I love that because it's a reverse engineering exercise, isn't it? And the answer to this question of who's your idol, my favourite is I think it was Matthew McConaughey said it. They said, "Who's your idol?" He's like, "Oh, I really need to think about this." And he says, "It's me in 10 years' time." And then they ask him again in 10 years, "Who's your idol? Are you your idol yet?" No, not even close. It's me in 10 years' time, and it's very much to what you've just said. Is okay. If you could view yourself in 10 years' time and you were your perfect self, how would that look? Oh well, I'd be Olympic gold medalist. I'd be, you know, um, twice over or whatever. I'm retired and coaching and all these sorts of things. Awesome. So how do we reverse engineer that to today? What's the year one goal, year two goal, year three, year four? Assuming no injuries or any outside events, of course, illness and all those sorts of things. So I think that's a really good way to look at things, is trying to understand what your values are. How do you describe a perfect house? Oh well, I want it to be this many bedrooms in this location. Okay, awesome. If you don't know what a perfect thing, and I know you don't like the word perfect, it's just a use of this word. What's the ideal? Let's say, what's the ideal X? Unless you know the ideal, how do you ever know what that means? It's like people say, oh, I want to be rich, or I want more money, and you give them 10 pence, and they're like, that's not what I meant. But then specify, because technically you got exactly what you asked for. You wanted more money. You wanted to be richer. You are by 10 pence. And this is where specificity is important. Understanding what you mean specifically by what it is you want in the future.
Correct, yes. And again, coming back to this idea of, separating values from goals, so an example I like to use is most folks might have the goal of, I want to get married. And then, if I have a church ceremony or go to City Hall and sign the papers, goal is achieved. But how I want to be in that marriage, that's a question of values. So goals is something you can check off. Once you reach it, check you're done. I want to win Olympic gold medal, check I'm done. But how you want to be as you pursue that goal, you can't really check that off. So if I value hard work, it's not enough to work hard on Monday and then take the rest of the week off. It's not enough to work hard in the gym, but not in the field of play. So this again, where values are so very powerful.
So I'm going to take away your likely answer to this question, because I mean the answer would be kind of clear. If I was to say to you, out of the three, which is the most important, and I can probably guess you're going to say, well, they're all equally important because they work together. So I'm going to take that answer out of your hands. If you could pick one apart from they all sort of fit together, which would for you be the most important out of the three, and why?
Correct. First of all, correct. They're all linked together. But if I take one, it'd be attention.
Why?
Strictly from a performance perspective, if I'm not present, if I'm not in charge of my attention, I get blown away by the emotional storms of competition. So that's why attention is so important. And again, attention as a formal act of love, really, right? Attention is precious. It is indeed the currency of performance. The
I
more
like
one
what you said earlier as well, is that attention, everyone is competing for your attention. Whether it's advertising, podcasting, TV, politics, everything is competing for your attention. And it is difficult, especially in today's day and age where you've got things coming from all angles. It's difficult to have attention, whether it's in the sporting environment or not. And do you think that comes down to concentration as well as anything else? Our ability to concentrate more than 10 seconds has diminished hugely over the past decade, coming from our activities and habits. Is that something that you think can be worked on and should be worked on in order to improve peak performance?
Yes, that is a trainable skill. And the concentration piece, that's sort of that narrowing of that light beam that you mentioned earlier, right? And knowing where to guide that beam. But absolutely, it is trainable, and we actually need to train it. And truth be told, is every time we engage in a particular task, every time we choose to engage in a sport, every time we read a book, we're actually potentially training that faculty. We're training attention. And then we can also train noticing when the mind wanders. and then with training awareness, right? And then we can train our ability to refocus on the task at hand. Um,
So,
and and
so go
uh,
on.
and like as far as I'm concerned, nobody puts this better than Rafael Nadal, right? In his autobiography, Nadal says, "What I battle hardest in a tennis match is to quiet the voices inside my head, to shut everything out but the contest itself, to concentrate every atom of my being on the point I'm playing. If I made a mistake on the prior point, let it go. Should a thought of victory suggest itself, crush it."
It's awesome.
Well,
I saw a percentage stat fairly recently. I don't know, maybe in the past year or two, where Roger Federer talked. He gave a speech saying that he'd throughout his career he only won like 51, 54% of his all of his points, but he won so many Grand Slams. And this is it. Sometimes you're not going to win all the time. It's how you use that. It's the mentality behind it. That just came into my mind because you mentioned Nadal. So here's a question then. So for people out there who are just missing out on medals, they're good. They're pretty much there. They either keep missing out on gold medals and getting silver, or they keep missing out on even the bronze medal, just finishing 5th, 6th, 7th, 4th, whatever it may be. What would your sort of one piece of advice to them be? What do you think is that pitfall, that last hurdle? If you imagine a 100-meter race, they've run all of the 9 hurdles or whatever, and they've got to the final hurdle and they've just fallen over. Why do they keep falling at that last hurdle?
the question I would ask there, okay, so what went through your mind on that last hurdle? And very often it'll be some thought or some feeling that steals attention. I'll give you an example from the Olympic Games in 2014, Winter Olympic Games in Sochi. The American skier Michaela Schifrin, she was 18 at the time. She had won, I think, 4 out of the 6 slalom races going into the Olympic Games. So she clearly was a favorite to win the gold medal. In slalom, they have 2 heats. The person that wins the first heat goes last in the second heat. She won the first heat. She was last in the second heat. As she skis down the slope in that second heat, the thought pops into her head, I'm about to win the gold medal. That's a very pleasant thought.
It's a dangerous thought, though. That is a
A
dangerous
very,
thought.
it's a very dangerous thought, right? Even though it's a thought full of confidence, as she has that thought, she loses focus. She almost wipes out of the course, but due to her remarkable skill, she can course correct, refocus, right? Saves herself, clears the gate, skis on the rest of the course, and wins the gold medal. That's an example of even for someone that skilled, who is focused on skiing, her race, thoughts can intrude, and pleasant thoughts can intrude, and they can derail you. And that's why it's so important. Can I be aware of that derailment, and then can I refocus on the task at hand?
It's like we said quite a bit earlier. It's such a big thing. Oh my god, that thing is so huge. The gold medal, the Olympic medal, the trophy. That's such a big thing that it sort of overshadows everything. It's like putting a turkey, a whole turkey on a pizza. A pizza is just going to be overshadowed by this huge turkey because it's just so big. And
Yes.
that's why it will always come into people's mind, and obviously people like yourself are there to sort of stop that happening, because don't it's like premature ejaculation, don't do it too quickly. Wait till after the race to have these sorts of thoughts. So who is if you think of all the sportsmen throughout your life that you've ever worked with or not, doesn't have to be someone you've worked with. And if and you don't have to name them. If someone you worked with, you can just call them Mr. Blogs or Mrs. Blogs or whatever. Who's got the best mentality that you've worked with or haven't worked with? From your experience.
Correct. I couldn't use the athletes that I work with, right? But the athlete that I often use as an exemplar is Rafael Nadal. Um, because I think he embodies those triple A's to a T, right? Super aware of what's on his mind, clearly in charge of his attention, and then the attitude of mind, his values are so consistent throughout his career. Always focused on work ethic, getting better, improving, irrespective of whether he wins or not. Like Serena Williams once said, when I watch Rafael Nadal, I see that tenacity, that fight, that honor, that ambition go into every shot he takes. So she's not inspired by his 22 Grand Slams. He's inspired by how he carries himself. Tenacity, fight, honor, going into every shot. That's the values piece. When you listen to Nadal, listen to his how he talks about the first round of the Grand Slam. He says basically that opponent in that first round is the most difficult opponent ever. That tells us he never underestimates an opponent. He's super respectful. Nadal is someone who has never thrown a racket in frustration on a tennis match, which is really remarkable, right?
Yeah, it's a good trait, isn't it, to be stoic and, as you said, aware of your thoughts and feelings. You're not impulsively, oh my god, so I'm angry, smash. You're like, okay, I'm experiencing some anger now. Why is that? Okay, let me calm down. What's the best way to be in peak state right now? Okay, is to be calm and just focus on my serve and my next shot.
And then the last piece here is just his openness to unpleasant emotions. Again, I quote him as I've felt every time I play here, and I've played 11 times. And this was about the French Open, which at that point he had won 9 times. He won a total of, I think, 14. Sorry, French Open, the 14 French Open. So if I ask the athlete, do you want to have doubt for 11 years? They'll always say, no, I don't want to have doubt for 11 years. Why not? Well, if you have doubt, I won't do well. Well, so you don't want to beat off Nadal, right? Who has this openness. Yes, I have doubt. And actually what he talks about is he says doubts are normal, and the doubts help him to never become complacent. So what Nadal is addressing here is the function of the emotion, not the form. The form of an emotion like doubt is unpleasant, is uncomfortable. But what really matters is what is the function of this emotion. So for him, the function of doubt is that he never took his foot off the gas pedal. He always trained, he always worked on getting better, and he never underestimates an opponent. So doubt actually functions well for him. So what I'm interested in is what is the function of this emotion as opposed to the form.
It's how you think about and use things, though, isn't it? It's flipping the script. Like we said earlier, if someone's better than you and they've proven that through results, most people go in thinking, oh my god, it's better than me, what's the point? You can flip that script and say, well, imagine if I beat this person. What's the sort of performance I would need to beat them? Well, everything needs to be perfect. Okay, cool. It's like you said, instead of saying, oh, this is my first round, this should be easy, it's like, no, this is my hardest opponent. I'm going to play my best game against everyone. And for other people, not okay, it's the first round, easy opponent. That's their thought, which then creates a weakened performance. Let's say. So
Yeah,
I think we have these thoughts. Everyone has very similar thoughts, but it's how you're using those thoughts, isn't it? It's how you're using those thoughts in order to progress your performance to a more ideal state than previously.
correct. It's how I relate to that thinking and feeling mind that is important.
So, is there anything that you think that we've not covered with regards to sports psychology and peak performance that maybe you think needs to be addressed and needs to be said?
Um, well, I think a big topic right now is this idea of mental health. And where the pendulum has swung a little bit away from performance in sports psychology towards mental health. But the conversation nobody's having is the preventative aspect And my argument is we can actually deliberately train the mind to be mentally healthy rather than waiting until something's broken and then we have to fix it. So coming back to the triple A's, right? We can train these superpowers, and that way actually give us a much better chance to stay mentally healthy. And in that sense, mental health is no different than physical health. Health that you actually want to take action, right, and be proactive. So just like if you want to be physically healthy, it's really helpful if you exercise. It's really helpful if you have a good diet. It's really helpful if you get enough sleep. But all those are actions we can take. So that brings us back to this idea of agency and sovereignty, that we can do a much better job of cultivating in ourselves and as a society as well, so that we're not just victims of our circumstances. We can step into sovereignty, and be in charge of our own actions.
So mental health again, coming back to those three, isn't it? Really, being aware of where things are, and
Exactly. Yeah. Mhm.
being able to manage that in a way that's beneficial for you, because as you say, anxiety anxiety rather is living in the future, and everyone has thoughts of the future. Some people choose to act on it. Some people just sit there and let it absorb them. And I quite like what you said. Instead of I am anxious and I'm an anxious person, which is what a lot of people say, victim mentality. It's I'm experiencing anxiety. In what's a good way to resolve it? Well, be present, because if I'm present, there's no way that I can be anxious. I actually spoke to a guy yesterday, a psychologist, about this, who was on the show. If you're doing something where you have to be 100% present, there's no chance in hell that anxiety can be present. If you're skydiving or you're doing something, in flow state, I know you said it's quite difficult, but that's just an example I'm going to use. It's very difficult and it's impossible to have or experience any anxiety at that point.
I would push back there a little bit, because I would actually say, again, this is my experience at Olympic Games. Anxiety very much can be there. It's just not a factor. It's more like, okay, just like there's a crowd there and the crowd is noisy, but if you're not focused on the crowd becomes background noise. And the reason I want to emphasize that is because I want to get out of the trap that anxiety is bad, that anxiety is negative, and anxiety needs to be changed. Anxiety is a normal human emotion that we all have. And again, what's the function of anxiety? The function of anxiety is to prepare for a threat ahead, right? So we can take effective actions. So yes, when I'm very focused, the way I would say that anxiety becomes a non-factor.
So yeah, so what you're saying, and that's absolutely right, is that the reason that we think about the future is because we are trying to stop negative things occurring a mile, 2 miles, 3 miles, 5 miles down the road. And yeah, we as humans we look into the future and we try and address things earlier, because otherwise there's a snowball effect and things get worse as they progress, I suppose. So what you're saying
Yes,
is
and,
that,
and
so go on.
yeah, so the reason we have anxiety is because our ancestors, cavemen and cavewomen, the ones who survived, the ones who passed on the genes, were the anxious ones. Because the anxious ones, they didn't venture out by themselves in the savannah. They ventured out in groups, and then they checked first, is there a lion around the corner? The ones who weren't anxious, they got eaten by the saber-toothed tiger. They didn't pass on their genes. The anxious ones passed on their genes. And again, their anxiety is functional, and we can listen to that function and use it to our advantage.
So you're going to the games? Is it next year? No, this year. No,
I
20.
don't have any. I don't have any winter sport athletes. I work solely with summer sport athletes.
So
So,
that's
so for next,
2028 in America, is it?
that's correct. Yes.
You're looking forward to it,
Very much so. Yes.
minus all of the politics going on. I suppose it's going to be. It should be a good one.
Well, yeah. Let's hope the politics don't get in the way of those games. Who knows?
So how many athletes are you working with when you go there?
It varies a bit. I have some team sport athletes. I have some individual sport athletes that I work with.
Fantastic. How many have you done so far? Did you say Olympics?
10 Olympic Games.
Which one was your favourite so far?
Two stand out, London and Paris.
London and Paris. And
Yes,
why
because
why specifically?
well, because in both in London and in Paris, you could literally taste the Olympic atmosphere in the air. Like if you like would leave the Olympic bubble, right, and you take public transit in London or in Paris, that the sense of joy and the sense of a common humanity was palpable. Like the venues in Paris, the venues in London, they were packed, they were beautiful, they were iconic. And again, you could taste that joy in the air for the spectators. And that joy, though, is in stark contrast to what the athletes often experienced right in that moment, before the big final, because there you feel the nervousness, there you feel the tension, and then at the same time, though, it's so inspiring to see athletes have the courage to step into that space and perform to their potential.
Love it. Well, thanks very much for being a guest on the show, Peter. I've learnt a lot myself, and yeah, keep doing what you're doing, and maybe I'll see your face on the screens in 2028.
Well, thanks for the opportunity, and ideally, you will not see my face on the screen. I'll be in the background. Stay off the jumbotron is the motto.
You're the whole puppet master in the background. You're not. The man behind the mask, the old Wizard of Oz.
Hopefully, there's more substance than the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, yeah. Fantastic. Well, thanks very much again. It's been a
Thank
pleasure.
you. Thanks for having me. Take care.